You uh, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that the world is losing its collective mind. And just some crazy stuff. Before I went to bed last night, I'm a bit of a news junkie, and so I have a news page. Some of you subscribe to it, or it doesn't cost anything, but and we've broken a few stories. Last night before I went to bed, I also have a hobby, and I'm not very good at it, but I'm trying. I've been studying weather, climate, probably 4 or 5 years now, and it's just, to me, it's just interesting. Nothing necessarily biblical about it, other than, in a broad sense, how the Lord taught us to be looking for these signs, these things. Now, you know, I always go back to, Jesus also said, so everything's got to be in context. Jesus said, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. Whoa, so how do you balance that? Well, maybe some of you have been to these churches, and God bless them. I don't question their salvation at all. But, I see a vision of an angel. Oh, no, wait a minute, it's not an angel. Let me think. And you get into this crazy stuff, and then I use the lady up in Phoenix, who people from all over the world started flying into her church because the Lord was pouring out gold dust on them every Sunday. And, I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night, you know what I mean? And so I get very, and it's the cop in me, I'll tell you that right now, or the ex-cop, I should say. But I get suspicious about some of this stuff. And sure enough, after some investigating and reporting, which I didn't have anything to do with, somebody found a janitor up on the roof in the ducts of the air ducts, pouring gold flaking dust glitter, whatever. And, for weeks they were on, this is a sign from God. And well, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that. All right, so last night before I go to bed, I'm checking the, you can see how boring my life is, the U.S. geological earthquake things, okay? And so I see this 6.8 in North Korea, and I'm like, they just set off a nuke. No doubt in my mind, right? And I couldn't find anything on the news about it. So I threw it up on my news page, and I said, I'm pretty sure. Maybe you saw it. I'm not sure exactly how I worded it, but I basically said, I'm pretty sure North Korea just set off another nuclear test. And it would make perfect sense because our country is coming together right now, at least temporarily. Didn't matter whether you were black, white, Asian, Caucasian, brown. If you needed help in Houston, people were helping each other. And it's just a miracle from God how it seems like, at least and let's enjoy it, shall we, that we're all finally Americans again. Not this identity politics is what's causing division. The minorities and some of the squeakiest wheels in our country, and I'm not going to give you a political speech today, I promise you, but they've gotten so far from Martin Luther King's goal of not to look at the color of a man's skin, but the what? Content of his character. And we've thrown that all, and we've turned that all upside down to the point where now it's identity politics, and it's just continuing to foster division in our country. And it's all part of, this is going back 2 or 3 years, when I taught you in Isaiah, how Isaiah predicted that great evil will begin to overcome the world. It's still coming, but folks, I'm telling you, the Lord is still in charge. He still is making a way for those who will seek after him. I told you many times, one of my favorite verses in the Bible, Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 13, where God says, you shall find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And when you seek him, he will find a way for you to learn about his son, Jesus Christ. The only way, the only truth, and the only way to get to the Father. Period. End of story. He's not a way. He's not one of several ways. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And so I saw this nuclear thing, which I assumed it was a nuclear test, and it turned out I was right before I went to bed last night, and I posted it, and sure enough, I get up this morning, and it's all over the news. Now, I'm not so much concerned about this. How can I put this? I'm more concerned about how we or others, including Japan, might react. I'm more concerned how South Korea might react. We may very well, and by everybody's admission, be on the verge of World War III. Now, I've said this a few times, but it seems like there is no other generation in the history of mankind that has been closer to the return of Jesus Christ, who will make everything right, as we are. We're the closest generation to have ever lived on the face of the earth to be as close to the return of Christ, more so than anybody else in the history of the world. That's pretty fanatical. That's pretty phenomenal when you think about it. Now, you could say, well, yeah, of course, everybody that's born after. Yeah. No, I'm telling you right now, I believe this is why, even though I spent all week getting ready for Romans chapter 7 so that we could continue our study from 2 weeks ago, I believe the Lord said, not so much there, Steve Areno. I got a better one for you, so I'm just simply trusting the Lord. If you would, let's go to some familiar verses in Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, and we'll start somewhere around the 4th or 5th or 6th verse. I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, let's start around the 4th verse, shall we? Familiar verses for most of you, but ever so applicable. And I only do this, I believe, because, well, one, the Lord wants us to, but two, these verses, these things that could be very scary to some, only seek to encourage the believer. We sang that song last week, I can only imagine what it's going to be like when we get there. And some of our friends from this church literally went ahead of us, and I envy them, and I still envy them. But I thought it was good, and I thought it was of the Lord that we should go over some familiar verses and perhaps look at them from a present-day perspective. So at Matthew chapter 24, my Bible says, let's start in the 4th verse. You know the setting. The disciples ask him what the signs are going to be. I'm ringing over there, Sarah. And Jesus said unto them, 4th verse, take heed that no man deceive you. Okay, so real quick, not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's a pretty logical conclusion. There's a lot of kookiness going on out there, including the idea that, aliens have been watching us, and they are currently occupying planet Nibiru, and Nibiru is coming close, and then they're all going to jump off, and they're going to come down, and they're going to give us ancient wisdom all over again. Okay, good luck with that. What am I going to say? Take heed. Just be careful, Jesus is saying, that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. This is a truth that Jesus is speaking here on several different levels. Let's take the simplest one first. The simplest one is that somebody's going to show up and say, I am your Messiah. I am your Christ. And there are going to be many of those, and there have been, and there will continue to be. All right, let's get that one out of the way. Check that one off the list. That's a biblical truth. But then there are others that will say, we offer you a path to salvation. We offer you a path to world peace. We offer you a path to universal harmony. If you'll just wear this crystal on top of your head and hum at a particular resonance of a hum, you'll have on and on and on. So it goes much deeper than just some fake or phony person declaring that they are Christ or declaring. You understand what I'm saying? Alternative ways, folks. There ain't no other way. And I'm sad to say that many of our denominational friends, brothers, and sisters have taken a wrong path. What do you mean by that, Pastor Steve? Well, I can tell you, 60 years ago, 75 years ago in this country, the Methodists were it. I mean, the Methodists taught the truth. They preached from the Bible. They taught that Jesus Christ is the only way. And now if you look at this man-made creation, and how it's been corrupted. And if you're a Methodist, please, I don't mean to offend you, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. They've gotten so far socialized. They've gotten so far, so as not to offend anybody. My Bible tells me that the cross of Jesus Christ is an offense. It is an offense to people. How dare you say that you know the only way to get to heaven? There's lots of ways. No, there aren't. If there were, then why in the world did a 33-and-a-half-year-old man have to suffer, bleed, and die? Not committing any sins, never having committed. What would be the point of him doing that if there were other ways? No, folks, there are no other ways. John 14:6, he is the way. He is the truth. That's from his mouth. Now, you either got to believe that Jesus was a liar, a lunatic, or that he is Lord. And I hope everybody in the room today believes that he is Lord. He is Lord. And every knee is going to bow to him. I remember before my dad passed, I remember saying to him, I was a pretty new Christian at the time, and I say this kiddingly, but it's sort of half true. I would witness to a light post if it would listen to me and take one of my Bible tracts. I would just everywhere I went, and so I'll never forget sitting in my dad's living room. My dad, avowed atheist, died right here in Green Valley, cursing God. But I'll never forget when I first became a Christian. I was at his house. My wife was there, and his wife was there, not my mother. And I'm telling him about Jesus, and at some point I said, because I knew he's just a stubborn, tough football coach, PE, every kid I have, I went through my whole public school. Are you in relation to Mr. Aiken? I felt like going, no, I kind of, just a tough guy. And I remember saying, I don't know why, but I said something to the effect of, it's far better for me willingly, knowing that every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, far better for me to make a decision now to bow my knee and confess him as Lord than to be forced in perdition, to be forced by some angelic being on my knees and being forced against my will and then being thrown into the abyss even after I do it, because there's no exceptions. Every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Now, that doesn't mean you get to go to heaven. No. Folks that don't, this is it, folks. On this side of heaven is where we get to make this choice. And I said, it's just smarter for me to make the decision now to bow my knee willfully than to be forced to in the afterlife. And my father turned to my mother, and my stepmother, his wife, and said that his mother, and my grandmom was a tremendous woman of God. She read the Bible every day. She taught me the Bible. In fact, this is how much my father hated Christianity and Christians. When some of what she was teaching me started to sink in. And when you're a kid, you repeat stuff and so on and so forth. But when some of the Bible lessons she would babysit me started to sink in, he made sure that I never was alone with her ever again. Wouldn't let me go see my own grandmother for many, many years. And that's how much he was just angry at God, how much he hated God. Turns to his wife and he says, I can't believe this. My mother's spirit has come back to haunt me through my son. Now, it wasn't her spirit, but it was the same spirit. All right. Many ways, many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, shall deceive many. Here it goes, folks. And you shall hear of wars and tumults, or traumas, if you will. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See, here's the most important thing I want to tell you today. See that you are not troubled. If you are troubled by the news today, one of two things. You need to surrender that trouble to the Lord wholly and completely. You know what, Lord? This world is yours. The Bible's clear. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. He's in charge. He makes the sun rise. He makes the sun set. He gives you your next breath. He is in control of it all. Not a sparrow falls to the ground that he does not know about. For you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass. And I'm just going to take a little liberty here. I don't think you'll mind. All these things are coming to pass. but the end is what? It's not yet, right? For nation shall rise against nation. I was absolutely shocked. Again, I'm not going to get into politics. But if there ever was a man who knew about the national scene, who knew about diplomacy and interworkings of the world, it's a guy many of you have heard of, most of you have heard of, a guy still around. His name is Dr. Henry Kissinger. He's been around. He was I believe he was the Secretary of State under Nixon in the 70s. He's quite the prolific world leader. Don't get me wrong. He is 100% in favor of what we refer to as the New World Order, a coming time where the government will be, just like 1984, will be your babysitter from birth to death. The government wants to take care of everything for you. The exact opposite of what this country was founded. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our Constitution, based on biblical truths. But Henry Kissinger said just the other day that the President of the United States, President Trump, is actually doing a pretty good job for the nation. I was shocked to hear that because, there's just so much hate and so much disgruntledness out there. I'm not going to get political, but I'm just telling you. You shall hear of wars and rumors. This is Jesus 2,000 years ago. Hello? Wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. The amount of earthquakes in the last 50 years, I want to say has quadrupled, but quadrupled is like 4 times. I don't know what 7 times is, but whatever that duple is, that's how many more earthquakes we have in present day than we did just 75 years ago. It's amazing. And of course, the creator of the universe, my Bible tells me that nothing was made that wasn't made by him. He knows what he's talking about. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilence, hello, and earthquakes in various places. All these, say it with me, are the beginning of sorrows. These are just the beginning of sorrows. Our hope is not in the world. Our hope is not in our government. Our hope is not even in GVR. Our hope is in the soon return of our coming King, Jesus Christ, who will rule with a rod of iron. In other words, what he speaks will come to pass. And my Bible tells me that in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, that's a microsecond, in the time it takes for your muscles to begin to contract, to make a blink, boom, that's what it is, twinkling of an eye. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together in the clouds to be with the Lord, and so we shall ever be with the Lord. He's coming for his bride. Jesus is coming for his bride. And if you know him today as Lord and Savior, I don't care if you messed up yesterday. I don't care if you told a fib last week. He loves you. He loves you so much so that he spread out his arms on that cross and he was willing to suffer and bleed and die for you. And all he asks is that you not ignore that ultimate sacrifice that he paid for you over 2,000 years ago. It gets even better than that. To prove he was who he said he was. After being in the grave, not even Houdini, don't worry, folks, I'm not going to fall. Not even Houdini. I know some of you get nervous, but I can't see you from the lights, so I got to get over here and lean closer. But not even Houdini could come up out of that grave. Jesus did so after the 3rd day, seen by over 500 witnesses. And to this day, we have no recording under threat of punishment, under threat of torture, under threat of being fed to the lions, under threat of having their heads cut off. We don't have a single eyewitness account of anyone who says they saw Jesus after he rose up out of that grave recanting and turning around and saying, hey, no, I want to keep my head, thank you. Being thrown, and our ancestors thrown in pots of boiling oil alive. All you got to do is say you didn't see them. That's all you got to do. I got to tell you, I'm a pastor. I'm as ingrained in this word as I can be. But I don't even know that I could withstand that kind of temptation. I don't know, man. I would like to think the Lord would equip me, but man, oh man, can you imagine that? And just to be extra cruel, many of our forefathers in Christendom, many of them had to watch their own children have at it first, given an opportunity to recount and say, no, he did not raise not a single account. Because I'm telling you, I've told you this many times, even if it was a 14-year-old handmaiden somewhere who said, I give up, I didn't see him alive again. That's all we'd hear about. Be on the front cover of Time magazine. Oh, the little girl who told the truth, who actually, no, folks, it's the real deal. All right, for nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Men shall then deliver you up to be afflicted. I don't know if you're familiar with the term Coptic Christian. Coptic Christians, for the most part in the Middle East, have been suffering the brunt of martyrdom for several years now, better part of 12 years, and there are almost none of them left. Now, Coptic Christians, let me just say this, although being a Coptic Christian entails a great deal of ceremony and it wouldn't, it's a little foreign to us, and of course our way of learning the Word of God and coming closer to Christ and having fellowship and having praise and worship would be very foreign to them. That makes no difference. Jesus is not a religion. It is a relationship with Jesus. And they have they teach, I should say, a relationship with Jesus Christ. And it has cost almost every single Coptic Christian on the face of the earth. They've gone from being this many to maybe being this many because they're being slayed, having their heads cut off by the Muslims in the name of their God, who is not, we don't care what politician tells you, who is not the God of the Bible. We do not worship the same God. Allah is not God the Father. Allah is not the same God. As a matter of fact, if anything, he is a false, demonic deity, and I don't care who hears me, I don't care how far it goes, he is not the true God. He is a false God who kills and cuts and murders little tiny babies in the name of his religion and has his followers to do so, and it is nothing but a God-forsaken, demonic way of relationship with a deity that is not the God of the Bible. The Quran specifically says that Allah, who is their God, has no son. Now, when their Bible, their Quran says that Allah has no son, that means that Allah is not the God of the Bible. Because my Bible tells me that God, the one true God, creator of heaven and earth, loved the world so much that he sent his only begotten son, that whosoever, are you a whosoever? I'm a whosoever, believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. All these, 8th verse, are the beginning of sorrows. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted. This is happening to our Coptic Christian brothers and sisters. Will it happen to us? I have my doubts, only because I believe the Lord is going to come for his bride sooner, but it certainly is happening in this part of the world. So what Jesus said is coming to truth, fruition, if you will, faster than any of us can imagine. And then many shall be, oh man, I could spend all day on this 9th verse. If you watch the news on college campuses, anybody that's even forget about being a Christian, anybody that's just a conservative or has a little bit different way of looking at things, now they're having riots and burning places down on college campuses because people that's speaking freely, which is one of the hinge pins of making this country the greatest country on the face of the earth, our First Amendment right to free speech and free association, because some little snowflake somewhere has been offended. I've been offended. I'm offended by you. You know why I don't speak on campus, right? Okay. I used to be a bodyguard. I'd need a team of 50 bodyguards, I think. Well, here we go. Look what Jesus said. Imagine that. Then they shall deliver you up and be afflicted, and you shall kill, and you shall be hated for all nations for my sake. And then many shall be, 10th verse, offended. Isn't that interesting? That the Lord actually used that word. And shall betray one another and shall hate one another. There are people in this country that are fostering that hate. They have no idea. They have no, it's just mind-boggling to some of us. You know, look, I don't believe in symbols. The American flag is not my God, but it is a symbol of freedom and liberty. And these same idiots who want to burn that flag and tear it down everywhere that they go don't understand that it's because of the flag and the men and women that gave their lives. It's because of that flag and what it represents that they're even allowed to stand there and be a stupid snowflake in the first place. It's so mind-boggling, it just defies logic. Why? Because their eyes are blinded. It's a spiritual war, folks. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places that is becoming more and more powerful because Satan, the enemy of men's souls, knows that his time is short. He knows that very shortly you and I are going to be taken out of the way, pre-trib, mid-trib, have your faith in whatever you want to think. I don't care. All I know is he's coming back, and I can't wait. And this is how Satan knows to expedite the evil in men's hearts. He's blinding people that they are literally just acting stupid. They're just acting stupid, and there are thousands of them. And they come together on college campuses, and they get on CNN, and they get on MSNBC, and they say, I'm offended. I was offended. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and hate one another. This is what's happening. And I got to tell you, started back in 1973 with a lady by the name of Madalyn Murray O'Hair. When she got prayer taken out of schools, it was the beginning of the end. That was probably 69. 73 was Roe v. Wade, another cataclysmic, ungodly, evil decision by the United States Supreme Court that said a baby in a mother's womb is not a person. And I don't want you to be law scholars. I want you to be Bible scholars. But when you read the Roe versus Wade decision in 1973 and you stack it up against the Dred Scott decision, 18-something, they almost read, it's almost as if the court in 1973 dug up the Dred Scott decision in 18 whatever it was, and they almost copied it word for word. A black person is not a person. A baby in a woman's womb is not a person. A black person has no rights. A baby in a mother's womb has no rights. A black person can be killed and it's not murder. A baby in a mother's womb can be killed. Now, I'm sort of halfway making that up, but if you read the decisions, you'll know I'm right. This is horrible stuff that's going on. Again, what did Jesus say? Don't worry, fret not, right? Then shall he deliver up to, 10th verse, and then shall many be offended, shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, I believe we are living in the time where iniquity is abounding. All the more reason for you as an individual and us as a corporate body of believers to be a light shining in the darkness, to be that salt of the earth. Folks, time is running out. The clock is ticking. The Lord is coming back. I have no idea who in the world, knowing full well that North Korea sent a missile that flew over Japan, who in their right mind could blame Japan for sending one back? I don't think anybody in the world is going to blame them. For crying out loud, these poor men, women, and children, they're having to go in what do you call it, shelters, fallout shelters, in Japan. That hasn't happened since the 1940s, for crying out loud. We've had peace for the most part. We've had conflicts, but for the most part, we've had world peace since the end of World War II, the big one. And the World War I don't think anybody here is old enough to remember that, but World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars, wasn't it? Then comes along the Great War, World War II. That one's definitely going to end all war. We're this close. See that you be not troubled. All these things have to take place. And many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And because, iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that endures unto the end, the same shall be saved. I don't have time to get into this. You're just going to take my word for it. He's not talking about your salvation. He's talking about where your trust lies. You see, if hard times hit, like that lady who was interviewed and all these testimonies that we're hearing coming out of Houston, I'm not telling you that, just because you know the Lord, that your life is going to be peaches and cream, but I am telling you, no matter what he allows to come into your life, he'll see you through it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Because he's with me. His rod and his staff comfort me. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He brings me rest. He brings me comfort. So that when the world, excuse my language, when the world goes to hell in a handbasket and everything is falling apart around me and people are stocking up on prepping and food preparation and water preparation and first aid and bunkers and all these other things, God bless them, I can say I know in whom I have believed. And I am convinced that he is able to keep that which he has promised me against that day. And that's the witness. And I've been saying this, some of you like Ida and some of you have been around with me for a while. I'm telling you, a day's coming when they're going to knock on your door, just like the Bible said, and they're going to say, tell me, Catherine, what is it? Why do you have peace when the rest of us are crying in our milk? How can you walk with your head up knowing that you have faith in a Savior that I've never even heard of? And how can you be, didn't you listen to MSNBC? They said that we all should be hiding under our kitchen tables and that we should be lining our walls and our doors with tinfoil. I don't know if they say that, but you get what I'm saying. No! I have peace. I have a peace that passes all understanding. Do you understand? I am nobody special. This peace that passes all understanding is available to every believer. All you got to do is ask for it. Lord, I'm not at peace. I'm a little shook up about this nuclear thing. I'm a little shook up about this North Korean thing. I need your peace. And man, I'm telling you, none of you that asks of bread of the Father will he give a stone. If you ask for a fish, he's not going to give you a serpent. He's going to give you peace. And it's a peace that you got to seek daily. This is why the bread of life was given to the Old Testament saints or believers, whatever you want to call them. It was given to them in daily rations. If you took more or tried to take more, it ended up stinking, turning into worms. Give us this day our daily bread. Jesus wasn't talking about your belly. Certainly that's part of it. But I need more of his peace. I need more of the Prince of Peace in my life every day. And this is the walk that we teach in this church that I'm continue to hammer into your head. It's a daily walk. Coming here on Sundays is great. Coming to Bible studies on Thursdays is great. But you need a daily walk with him. And we do that by communing with him, through this thing called prayer. Now, in just a minute, we're going to get ready to take communion. It is another outward expression to the world that you identify with Christ's broken body and his shed blood. But I'm telling you, it's more than just a symbol. Is it symbolic? Yes. But it's more than just a symbol. I'm telling you, by placing your faith in nothing more and nothing less than Jesus Christ and him crucified, risen again on the third day for you personally, I still believe that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He'll bring healing to your life by communing with him through your prayer and through taking the communion today. He'll bring peace into your life. It's a most holy sacrament that Jesus commanded us to do. It is an ordinance of the church that Jesus told us to do until when? Until he comes back. So we say, even so, come quickly, Lord Jesus. If you want to, who's ever handing it out, hold on to the cup and hold on to the wafer until we give it out. I don't know who's in charge of giving it out, but if you would, please, because I just want to read a couple more verses here while you guys pass that stuff out, and then we'll take communion. But he that endures unto the end, the same shall be saved. So he's not talking about your salvation. He's talking about seeing you through. He's talking about you coming to church on a Sunday somewhere, taking communion and identifying and saying, yes, Lord, I still trust you. I know the Bible says you're supposed to examine yourself, but many of us make the mistake of thinking, well, if I'm examining myself, I got to go through the list to make sure I confess this and make sure I got this right. No, he wants you to examine where your trust is, your heart. That's exactly right. He wants you to examine where your heart lies. Where is your trust? Is your trust in the shed blood of Jesus Christ, his broken body for you personally? Then you take communion with us today. You don't have to be a member of this church. If you identify with Christ, you take communion with us, saying, I trust you, Lord, and I want to trust you more today than I did yesterday. He that endures unto the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto the nations. Then the end comes. Billy Graham, a couple of others, got together in 1983 and put a world map up on the drawing board and basically said, we've pretty much covered, in 1983, we've covered the entirety of the world with the gospel. And I don't know whether that was accurate or not, but I'm pretty sure we've done it. Between satellites and internet and the interweb and all instant picture phone things with your thing, all that, we've covered it. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto the nations, and then the end comes. When you, therefore, see the abomination of desolation spoken of the prophet Daniel, I wish I had more time to get into this, stand in the holy place. He that reads, let him understand. The third temple is about ready to be built, folks. Whether we will be here to see it or not, I do not know. God doesn't check in with me before he does things. I know it comes as a surprise to some of you, but he doesn't. But the third temple's getting ready. They're ready. The red heifer is alive and being bred for the sacrifice. The Levitical priests have already been trained. The spot's been picked out by God. And all they have to do, and you know how fast things can be built nowadays, they could probably build that temple in less than 3 months, I'll bet you. And at some point, the Antichrist is going to come. He's going to make a 7-year peace deal with the nation of Israel. All that had to take place for Jesus to return, the only prophecy that had to be fulfilled for Jesus to return, happened May 14th, 1948. Israel became a nation again. And so since then, we've been expecting, with a bit of urgency, the return of Christ. The Antichrist, whom, I got to tell you this right now, the Jewish people are going to look to as the Messiah. They're going to say, forget about that Jesus stuff. This guy's it. Why? Because there are many in Israel, and who can blame them to an extent, that will sell their soul for peace in Israel. They don't like living in bomb shelters. They don't like having their children wear gas masks. They don't like worrying about whether they can walk down the street and not get stabbed or not. Let him who's in the house at that time come down and don't take anything. Neither let him which is in the field return back. And woe unto them that were with child and give suck in those days. But pray that your flight be not in winter, neither in the Sabbath. This is mostly for the Jews at the time when this happens, but it's worth reading anyway. For then shall be great tribulation, such as not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, and the Lord will shorten them for us, no flesh will be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. 23rd verse. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders. And this is what I want you to pay attention to. Going to look like the real deal. great signs and wonders, inasmuch that if it were possible, they will deceive the very elect. That's you. Behold, I have told you before. I'm going to ask you now to take the